because we want to end right around that 3:30 time and make sure that both Kurt and Gary have an opportunity to present on two things that I think you're going to find extremely exciting. And these are opportunities from our Chelan and Douglas PUD to really be partners and to expand their reach in our community. And there's just tremendous opportunity. And those of you that are not from this area, I think when you hear these two particular presentations, you'll be very, very pleased about how these two particular PDs, through their leadership team, have really reached out and tried to expand their opportunities in STEM education and also to be innovators going forward. And so I'm going to introduce to you Kurt, and then Kurt will introduce Gary as they go forward. But Kurt is the Managing Director of Generation and Transmission at Chelan PUD. He's also part of a number of our committees, the planning team for this. He's also a member of our bridge network in town and a strong partner in the work going forward. And more than that, he's just a personal friend and somebody I think you'll enjoy very much. So with that, Kurt Hudson.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. It's an honor and a privilege to speak here on behalf of Chelan County Public Utility District. Before I get started, a little bit about Chelan County PUD. Got a strong heritage of innovation in North Central Washington in the hydropower arena. Some very bold leaders in the 40s and 50s that made some courageous decisions to recognize and harness the energy associated with the Columbia River that runs through our beautiful valley. And this community is reaping the benefits of that today. I think just by the way of introductions on our hydropower capacity, we have 3 dams, 2 on the Columbia River, 1 up at Lake Chelan. We have the capability of generating approximately 2,000 megawatts of hydroelectricity. We only use about 20% of that for our local load. We sell 50% of that on long-term contracts to Puget Sound Energy and Alcoa. And then we have another 30% surplus that we sell on the wholesale market through various contracts. What that allows us to do with the surplus energy is take those revenues, keep the cost low for our customers here in Chelan County, extremely low electric rates. The other thing it allows us to do is to provide services that we wouldn't be able to afford to provide otherwise, which includes water, wastewater, and wholesale telecommunications, which I'll get into a little bit later. We have a strong heritage associated with education as well. We've got 3 of our 5 board members are former educators or administrators. We value education greatly. I heard a lot this morning about many of the things you're talking about, pathways, apprenticeships. We've got a whole K through 12 education program. We've also got what we call a STEM Academy, which is a 1-week program out at our Rocky Reach facility. And this year, first time ever, we did what was called the Hydro Think Tank, which went beyond the K through 12 into the college education realm. And we invited students from the Northwest. We had Gonzaga, Eastern Washington University, University of Washington, Western Washington, and Portland State represented in this Hydro Think Tank, which is a 3-day program. We gave students a real live problem that we have at our hydro facility. It was sponsored with Grant PUD as well, and the Army Corps of Engineers. So they got a real life problem to work on for a week, and it was just amazing to see what these students came up with, and now our challenge to implement the solution they came up with. But very innovative. We get to see what's happening in the universities through that program, and we get to see what we might be able to apply here in our industry. So strong heritage of education. We have over 20 apprentices currently in place, wiremen, mechanics. We've got technicians and linemen for those apprenticeships, and we see tremendous value people that go through the apprenticeship programs. We see our retainage rate actually higher when they go through the apprenticeship programs. They stay longer in our organization, so we value that greatly. So a couple topics I want to touch on. One is called the Hydropower Research Institute, and the other is our Microsoft partnership that we have. We'll start with the Hydropower Research Institute. One of the common themes you'll hear here is that in this valley, the mountains and the hills are pretty high around us, and so there is a tendency to try and keep things in the valley. but we recognize we can't do that if we want to be innovative. Our mission and vision statements speak to innovation and enhancing the quality of life in Chelan County, so we've got to reach beyond the mountains that surround this valley. One of the ways we're trying to do that is through this Hydropower Research Institute. Our board actually took the initial step in forming this separate nonprofit company here in Wenatchee, Washington. And it's I'll get to why in a minute, but just to start out with the challenges the hydropower industry is facing. It's a very mature industry. Hydropower has been around for over 100 years, and a lot of the equipment has been around for that long. We've also got employees that have been around for a long time that actually saw and participated in the construction of many of the facilities up and down the Columbia right here in north central Washington. We've got aging infrastructure challenges. Equipment is wearing out. Even the structures themselves are showing signs of wear. The other thing is we're competing in markets, and we actually have a resource on the renewable energy side, hydro, that goes with wind and solar. There's also incentives in the wind and solar industries that provide them opportunities to generate at less cost than what hydro does standing on its own. There's also a tremendous amount of funding going to battery storage. And so when you think about, well, this is the world now that didn't exist 20 years ago for hydropower asset owners, a whole new world. And so we've got to make sure that we have a competitive product, one that's been around for a long time, now has to do things differently and be innovative to recreate itself for that new world. And then lacking recognition. Different regions have different policies on hydropower. Hydropower is treated with renewable portfolio standards, and there's different ways in different states of whether or not you get credit for that. So a lot of challenges for hydropower. So one of the things we want to do is we don't have control over all those things ourselves at Chelan PUD. But what we do have control over is these three things. We've got the ability to control our operating costs, improve our reliability, and improve our quality. And we feel like if we do this really well, we're going to stack up really nicely in this whole new world. So this Hydropower Research Institute was created to address these three things right here for hydropower owners, not just in our region, but globally, and I'll get to in a minute how we intend to do that globally. The principles for the Institute is recognizing that a lot of improvements in hydropower have been made over the years, and a lot of the low-hanging fruit has been picked, if you will. So improvements in machine design have been made for efficiency. There's the ability with hydropower now to convert water to energy at greater than 90% conversion. So very efficient machine design. Improvements have been made over the years on fish-friendly designs, trying to get less sharp edges on the turbines, more rounded so that fish can actually improve survival through the turbines. So we believe the next wave of frontier and improvements is actually on the digital transformation side. What we refer to on digital transformation is three components: data, tools, and culture. So the Institute was formed on the premise that aggregating data, and I'm talking about operational data amongst hydropower facilities, will unlock a whole new wave of improvements in the industry, not just here, but globally. And that data has value. The current model in the hydropower industry that we have to work with before the Institute was started was that hydropower owners would give their data to somebody and then pay to get the analysis back. In some cases, an awful lot of money to get the analysis back. So the Institute was formed to create the alternative model to retain the value of your data, build the ability to do the analysis yourself, and then have that knowledge and capability and understanding yourself rather than paying for it and buying it from somewhere else. The other piece is tools. Just in the last 5 years, it's amazing what's happened with cloud computing and cloud services, and so that tools that used to cost a lot of money don't cost a lot of money, and you can turn them on and off. Just right now, in the next 15 minutes, you could have another tool available to you just at the flip of the switch. And then the third piece is kind of the culture piece that we're trying to get at, is that data and tools are great, but if they don't change the way you operate your business, it's all for naught. So we're trying to address that culture piece through the Institute, and we're doing that by collaboration. So we use this, what's called the analytics value curve, to talk a lot about what we're really trying to do as an institute. And I don't know how well you can see that, but down here, there's different stages, but stage one here is, oh my gosh, I have a lot of data, I don't know what to do with it. We find that many people in the utility industry are there. They've got tons and tons of data from their machines, pressures, temperatures, vibrations, but they're not sure. They're collecting it, but they're not sure what to do with it or what it's telling them or how they should change their operation. All the way to the other end of the spectrum is process optimization and automation. So the Institute was formed to help hydropower owners move from here to there together. And what we find in our collaboration forums is that most utilities are down here in the 3 to 5 range, basic reporting, business intelligence. Some are dabbling up here in the 6 to 7 range, where they're getting prescriptive and trying to become predictive. And the name of the game for improving your reliability in the hydro power industry is becoming better at predicting what's going to happen before it happens. Failures and unplanned outages are extremely costly. At certain times of the year when there's lots of water in the river, they're less costly because your capacity is limited. Other times of year, like right now, very little water in the river, and so you need to generate all you can. And the markets change depending on the time of year. So in order to prevent those unplanned outages, you have to get better at recognizing when things are coming to stave off those failures. So the Institute was formed in July of 2018. Sole purpose initially out of the gate was collecting operational data amongst hydropower asset owners. Currently, we've got 2 different customers, if you will. We have this side, which is if you're a hydropower asset owner, you're on the what we call the contributor side, where you've got data to collect and offer, and you're also getting the analysis back. And then this side is the subscriber side. There's a lot of people in our industry that are very interested in getting a hold of that data. Manufacturers of turbines and generators would like to get a hold of that operational data. It helps them understand how the equipment is being operated. It helps them sell products and services as well. We also have a fair amount of interest on the research side of things, both on the university front, and Department of Energy and national labs are also very interested from a number of research projects that they're doing, so they would like to get access to the data as well. We don't have any agreements in place on this side. We've got 3 agreements in place after a year on this side. Chelan PUD being the first one. Southern Company, who's actually Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi Power, has a pretty significant hydro fleet. They were the second ones to say, yes, we value this a lot and we want to join in. And the third one is actually the largest producer of hydropower in the United States, the Army Corps of Engineers. So those are the 3 that currently have agreements in place with the Institute. We're currently aggregating data amongst those 3 companies. And to date, we've got a proof of concept platform that's actually up and running. We've onboarded 7 facilities, 7 plants from across the United States, from West Coast to East Coast. And we've got a technical steering committee. This is the part of bringing things from outside the valley into the valley. The technical steering committee is made up of myself and Lisa Martindale of Alabama Power, and Daniel Rabin, who's the hydro chief for the Army Corps of Engineers in Washington, D.C. So that's the technical steering committee. With those 3 companies, there's commitments for aggregating data amongst 110 hydro plants, 489 units, which a unit would be a generator and a turbine. And then that represents about 30% of the hydro capacity in the U.S. We're talking to a number of hydro owners as we speak right now. The interest has actually gone beyond the United States pretty quick. Talking to a couple of big hydropower producers in Canada, and then one in South America as well, and not to mention one in Africa. So word's getting out. The one in South America just saw our website and sent us an email and said, hey, what does it take to join this? Because we think they felt like they were down on the one side of the value curve, and they wanted to work with other hydropower owners to start climbing that. So that's where the Institute is. Off the first year, after I saw a couple of presentations this morning, darn it, I don't have any charts and graphs. And but that's okay. Our focus right now is on aggregating the data that can be unleashed for all kinds of purposes. So a year from now, I'm actually committing to, I did this in a collaboration forum we had a couple weeks ago in Alabama, committing to a year from now, we will actually have enough data where we can show some of the amazing things that are possible and some of the improvements that are being made in the hydropower industry as a result of aggregating operational data. One thing that's been interesting to me is at least the people participating at this point in time have said, boy, we don't want to limit this to operational data. We don't want to limit it to temperatures, vibration, pressures on our machines. We actually want to go beyond that and include our environmental data. Very important point for hydropower facilities is the environmental stewardship. And so the companies would like to start including, we're all collecting a tremendous amount of environmental data from water quality, temperature of the river, fish. We're collecting all kinds of information on fish passage upstream and downstream of our projects. And so there's already the desire to expand beyond operational data to the environmental data. And then the other piece is the maintenance data. There's entire systems on how we maintain our assets, and utility owners want to use that maintenance data to understand how the machines are operating and what they can do on the maintenance side, both to reduce costs and improve the maintenance they're doing. And then last but not least, just to talk briefly about the Microsoft partnership. So earlier this year, we announced in collaboration with Microsoft a new 5-year power agreement with them. And Chelan PUD actually provides the energy for the Puget Sound campuses of Microsoft. And one of the things that they held near and dear to their hearts was clean energy. And so this agreement allows us to provide 100% carbon-free energy to the Microsoft campuses in the Puget Sound. What's great about this is it's more than just a power sales agreement. It's a partnership, and what came along with it was a memo of understanding to work collaboratively together with Microsoft on broadband deployment. We have a fiber to the home network here in Chelan County, and we're to approximately 75% of the homes in our county. We would like to go to 85%. The cost to go to 85% is extremely high to get to those far extremes of canyons and rural areas in our county. And so one of the things Microsoft is very interested in is rural broadband deployment as well. So they've said, hey, let's agree to work on this together and see what we can do to get to those far extremities of the county. It's got 3 components to it. One of them, look at different technologies beyond fiber to the home, wireless technologies that might be capable and better suited for that last mile. The other piece is to actually look at total life cycle cost of equipment and technology to make sure we're providing that broadband at least cost. And then the third piece is to work together collaboratively on the policy and legislative side to promote rural broadband. So we're really excited about this. We're just in our first year with Microsoft, and can already see there's all kinds of opportunities both on the energy technology and broadband side of things. So I'm excited about that. With that, I'm going to introduce Gary Ivory, General Manager of Douglas County PUD, and while he's walking up here, I'll try and pull his presentation up. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me here today to talk to you a little bit about Douglas PUD. Kirk did a great job of talking about PUDs, and so folks that are not from the area, I'd just like a quick show of hands. How many of you think that hydropower is actually renewable? Quick show of hands. Okay. There's quite a few people that think hydropower is renewable in the audience. We've been doing some studies recently, and we're finding out that over time, back in '07, which isn't very long ago, through 2019, the perception of hydropower as a renewable source of energy has actually decreased quite a bit, which is very interesting to us here in the Wenatchee Valley because we're in the kind of the belt buckle of hydro country here. And to see folks like the wind and the solar folks be able to make such inroads into the electrical industry is great. It's great for the industry to see some of that innovation. But as Kirk I think pointed out, I think dams are old. They're these 100-year-old structures. They're out on these rivers. They're not cutting edge technology anymore. I think that's the perception. And one thing that we struggle with, just like the wind and the solar industry, is how to integrate a renewable resource. We have very, very extremely variable river flows, and we use the river like a big battery. When you guys get up in the morning and you jump in the shower and you turn your hair dryers on, I don't use a hair dryer, in case you're wondering, but when you turn your hair dryers on, it creates this huge spike in the grid, and we have to dump a ton of water down the river to catch up with that. And wind and solar can't do that, quite frankly. If you had a solar panel on the outside of your house in the morning, in this area where there's not a lot of sun, and that was your sole source of power, you wouldn't be able to take your hot. You might be able to take your hot shower because the water probably will stay warm over the night. But when you flip your blow dryer on it, it wouldn't handle the capacity. So why are we getting into hydrogen? Kirk did a great job of talking about innovation in the public utility district realm. The people that came before us were wise enough to build these big hydro projects on the river, and we can produce power at lower cost than any other resource right now. But we also have cutting edge fiber optic technologies. I live out in the country, and I have a 100 meg asymmetrical fiber connection at my home. And these are some of the benefits that we receive from our public utility districts in this area that we sometimes take for granted. But we have very expensive mechanical plant, and Kirk mentioned that it's extremely expensive to rebuild these hydro projects. And we have efficiency issues too. Just like any renewable resource, we have efficiency issues. And so we have to carry about 15 to 20 megawatts of what we call reserves. And we calculate that's about $1.2 million. And so for folks that aren't familiar with what a reserve is, we have to make sure that when you turn your hairdryer on, you have the energy to do that. Or when a transmission line goes down or a generating asset goes offline, that the grid is stable enough to handle these big fluctuations. And so utilities carry reserves, and it's very costly to carry those reserves. We calculate that's about $1 million to 1.2 million a year just to carry those reserves on the system. And we have what's called a signal that's generated through the computer systems at our projects. This is a graph. This upper graph is a graph over time of how much power we're producing. So at night, we're down here around the 150 megawatt range, and then during the day, we pop up here to 600 megawatts. But this is when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing. When the wind's blowing, we produce far less energy, and it varies every 4 seconds. So the mechanical devices that we have 10 turbines in our dam. It's an 840 megawatt dam. But every 4 seconds, we're actually making adjustments on those mechanical systems at our dam that produce a lot of wear and tear on that infrastructure. and over time it wears those pieces of infrastructure out. Years ago, when we didn't have wind and solar, we could almost block load that. It might pop down at night, but it would be almost block loaded, really consistent. We're not seeing that anymore. The requests and the signals that we're getting are like this, because if a cloud goes over a solar panel, guess what? There's a big drop in power. We have to increase production. And so the hydro facilities in the Northwest do that for us. So why are we looking at electrolysis? We have a need to smooth that extreme variability out of our mechanical systems and create a system that we can make energy out of that will actually capture energy, but it's also a non-mechanical device. This is called a proton exchange membrane. The membrane here this is PEM electrolysis. The membrane here in the middle, you can see the oxygen coming, or the water coming in over here. You can see the solar panel generating electricity up here. And this membrane splits out the hydrogen, takes it over here, and it splits out the oxygen on the other side. So we're really just attaching electrons to the hydrogen. It's a form of energy storage. You could use a battery to do this, but on the scale that we're talking about in the hydroelectric industry, we've got to have something much larger. Let's see. So the benefits to our system, we've talked about that before. Operation and maintenance. We really want to reduce our operation and maintenance costs. We want to use a durable, non-mechanical device to smooth out all that variability that's going on at our hydro project. And guess what? The input cost for these electrolyzers is 80% electricity. We've got a lot of electricity at these dams, and it's really low cost. So this is a great opportunity for us to take our electricity and produce something different, a gas, a renewable gas, that can be used out in other industries. And hydrogen is widely used in the United States right now. About 99% of hydrogen, or 96% of hydrogen, excuse me, is produced through a steam reformation process that uses natural gas, and it's extremely carbon intensive. But all that hydrogen that is used to in the industrial processes that you see to reform or to purify your gasoline, hydrogen is used to take the sulfur out of gasoline. It's used in the food industry. It's used in the silicon manufacturing process. It's used in all these different industries. And so but it's all created with carbon-based resources. We went over some of this stuff. I think people are mostly interested in hydrogen because there may be a transportation component out there. I am not an anti-electric vehicle person, so I'm not going to get into debates whether hydrogen vehicles or electric vehicles are better or worse. But about 10 megawatts a day would power our whole county, all the cars, buses, semi-trucks, and everything running around Douglas County, we're a pretty small county, but that's a pretty small amount of electricity also. The picture here on the bottom, there's a company called Nikola down in Arizona, and they're beginning to produce hydrogen-powered trucks that can basically travel the United States. So, when you think of a battery vehicle, batteries are very heavy. Hydrogen is one of the lightest elements around. And so a lot of the heavy industries are moving to hydrogen so that they can move goods and services around. If we're going to really take the United States into a reduced carbon, we're going to have to figure out the heavy transportation issues that we're faced with. So Nikola is trying to do that. Have a couple more slides just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on out there. The picture in the top here is a military truck that GM has developed. It's a hydrogen-powered off-road vehicle that the military is using. This is a Mercedes-Benz fueling up over here at a hydrogen fueling station. This is a Hyundai, and this is a Toyota. Now these are different cars. You can't dump hydrogen into your gasoline-powered cars. Hydrogen is a high-pressure gas that's stored in these high-pressure tanks, and then there's a big battery also. It's not quite as large as an electric vehicle, but the hydrogen's used to produce electricity that charges the battery that really runs the electric car. So they call these fuel cell electric cars, fuel cell electric vehicles. And the advantages to vehicles in this category are really they can be heavy duty, very fast to fuel. So if you pull up to a gas station to fill your car up, it takes the same amount of time, 3 to 4 minutes, just like it takes 3 to 4 minutes to fill your car up with gasoline today. And then, you know, they have a good long range situation. So a semi can go 500 to 750 miles. They're low weight and they're zero emission. Like I say, I'm not an anti-electric vehicle person. I think you know, electric vehicles have made great inroads to help us reduce the carbon footprint of the transportation sector, but we've got to do something related to the heavy-duty vehicles to really make inroads there. The emissions coming out of a hydrogen-powered car are water, so kind of cool. You push a little button on the Toyota Mirai and it dumps water out on the ground. So that's all I had. We're really excited to start producing hydrogen. We think we're going to be able to produce hydrogen by the spring of 2021 is our goal. And cost-wise, to fill up a hydrogen car, cost me about $40 to fill up my Toyota Camry today. It's going to, if I had a hydrogen-powered car, it would be $10 to fill up my hydrogen-powered car based on our energy prices here in our area. So we're excited to bring this technology forward and see what we can do for the residents of our service territories. Thanks for letting me present to you.
Wasn't that fantastic, you guys, both of those there? With the technology and innovation and the things going forward. So great work here. Michelle, are you ready for our final piece on our two legislators? Kurt, Gary, thank you both very, very much. That's great. And I see Dr. Schultz giving her card to the PUD people. Well done. That's great. Okay.
All right, thank you. How much time do we have left? Till 3:30, is that right? So in our audience today and coming up forward here is Senator Brad Hawkins from the 12th Legislative District based out of Wenatchee here, and also from the House of Representatives, Mike Steele, who is from the 12th Legislative District, also based out of Chelan. And Alex Jabara needed to cancel, so he's not able to be here with us this afternoon. So welcome, gentlemen, and thank you for being here. Glad to see you. So this group is the extraordinary leadership on the Governor's STEM Alliance, and they have been busy learning all day about all the exciting things going on in North Central Washington related to STEM initiatives. And we have invited you here today to test you on what your priorities are for the legislature moving forward to support the STEM initiatives that we really are passionate about. So Representative Steele, if you'd like to share with us kind of your background and interest in STEM initiatives, and then we'll ask you after Senator Hawkins goes about your priorities for the legislature. And I think I have microphones for you.
Here we go.
There you go.
All right.
Thanks, Debbie.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for having us this afternoon. It's exciting to be able to talk about STEM education. For me, it's a very personal thing. My family, when I was in the 3rd grade, decided that they would start their own school based off of the STEM education principles. So they went through a process of establishing that school, getting it up and running, and utilizing some curriculum and support from the Stehekin School, which Dr. Price and I just had the opportunity to visit about 2 weeks ago now. And we got to see in real time example of STEM or STEAM curriculum where these kids are really, really shining because of that opportunity and the way in which they're educated in their environment, utilizing their environment. So pulling in, for those of you who aren't familiar with Stehekin, it's actually the most remote place in all of the lower 48. This year they have an enrollment of 9 students, and they range in age from 1st grade all the way up to 8th grade. And very interesting, they gave a great presentation. All the students were there and presented us with stories and songs and sort of walked us through their daily routine. A very integrated curriculum around STEM and STEAM because the arts, I would say, are a really integral piece of what they're doing up there in Stehekin. So my commitment to that is trying to see how we can scale that. You know, how can we get access to kids that might be in school districts larger than 9 students that still require that sort of hands-on opportunity that will require a little bit more intensive instructional time. So, you know, giving the teachers and the practitioners in that classroom the opportunity to apply their knowledge, but make it useful and provide the real-time examples and real-time excursions. You know, where when you're in Stehekin, you know, if you're going to learn about trees, you're going to actually go out and determine the difference between a conifer and other species of trees. So it's really exciting that that is happening in my district and across a multitude of school districts, not just in Stehekin, but we have some pretty cool curriculums modeled after that in other parts of the district as well. But that's kind of where my passion lies, and so I'm committed to seeing that move forward statewide in some practical way, whether it's through maybe a mastery-based program or competency-based program that we can initialize at the state level. But more to be seen on that, and working with all of you in this room, hopefully we can see some of those things come to reality. Senator.
Thank you, Senator Hawkins.
Yeah, so anyway, I would like to also, like Representative Steele, thank you for coming. It's so great to see so many of you. Jean, Dr. Sherritt shared with me the impressive list of all the attendees, and it's really cool to have you all here. And it's no surprise to see the apples out on the table. I took a close look to see if they were the Cosmic Crisps,
Not
but
the
they were the
number
Honey
one.
Crisp, which is actually my favorite. And I did some checking today with one of my colleagues in the industry. The Cosmic Crisp are coming very soon. The new crop Cosmic Crisp, if you haven't yet heard of this new variety apple, and we got WSU here and everything. But anyway, the Cosmic Crisp are coming here in a couple weeks. I think they will be harvested, so watch out for those. Those will be exciting. I was raised right here in Wenatchee, so it's just very special to have you all here. So before I talk a little bit about STEM, just want to encourage you all to come back and visit again. Come stay in the hotels here, bring your purses and wallets, and invest in our local economy. So it'd be great to have you back. But STEM is something that I'm very excited about in the legislature. Representative Steele and I actually serve in similar roles on the education committees. I serve as the ranking Republican member on Senate Education, and Representative Steele serves as the ranking Republican member on House Education. So we are involved in this issue. And one of the things that I'm most excited about STEM is that it's very much a bipartisan issue. You know, that's really important, I think, for us to keep issues bipartisan so that we can all work together. And it's exciting just to see how our legislature has come together for CTE, for career connected learning. And so I think the future is bright, and we definitely have had some successes in recent years. Some of the grants that you've heard about, some of the partnerships with the educational service districts and others, the advancements in career connected learning, putting that really on the map for our state is pretty exciting. And then locally, what you're beginning to see for STEM are the things you've heard about. The partnership between Chelan PUD and Wenatchee Valley College, the college and Wenatchee School District is really important. There's a lot of opportunities for young people to get involved in awesome STEM-related careers and learning opportunities here. The hydrogen project and the other projects we've heard about from Douglas is pretty exciting too. And then in tree fruit, I think about everybody's harvesting those by hand, but someday soon we'll probably have mechanical harvesting. Obviously, that's very much something that we can lead in STEM fields. So I'm really excited about the future for STEM, not only here, but in our state.
Great, thank you. We have some awesome things going on here in the Valley. So let me ask both of you, as you're heading into the legislative session here soon, what would your priorities be that we might be able to have you share with us today?
For me, I think it's an interesting session that's coming up. For those of you who may not realize, but the state budget's on a 2-year cycle, and we alternate between the longer and shorter sessions based on where we are in that budgeting process. And since we already approved the 2-year budget, we're approaching a short session. So we're only really going to be in Olympia for 60 days. I don't know necessarily that I have any STEM priorities for this short session. I think we're probably looking at just some minor modifications to the existing budgets. Hopefully, our economy will continue to hold strong. We'll see some of the same revenue that we were expecting. But you never know. You know, it was 2 weeks into the session actually last year when I got a call from Douglas County PUD about their interest in exploring this renewable hydrogen opportunity and how to deal with all their surplus electricity that they're experiencing here in the springtime. And they didn't have the authority to do what they are talking about. So I actually was the sponsor of the bill in the Senate that extended the PUDs the authority to produce and distribute renewable hydrogen. So, and I think some of those opportunities, when you think about STEM opportunities, will be very big, not only for our area and our state. So I guess while right now I don't have any particular priorities, you know, I think things could materialize later in the session. But certainly one of the things I'm excited about is when you look back on the recent budgets, I think we invested at least a couple $1 million in some STEM grants statewide. I know the ESDs were some recipients of that. We have an awesome Apple STEM network here. So, you know, there's a lot of good things happening.
Great, thank you. Senator Field?
From my perspective, the importance of leveraging partnerships will be something we focus on in this next legislative session. To the senator's point around the grants, you know, working in partnership with some of our employers in Washington State who are looking for folks who are educated in these fields is going to be really, really important. So how do we work with the Microsofts of the world? How do we encourage them to continue to partner with the state, because they have put a lot of money into STEM education and grants that are available that the state can match, I think has been really an important step by some of those larger employers. I'd like to look to continue those partnerships and leverage more dollars, even because you hear all the time from employers around this state what they're looking for, and they just can't seem to find those students coming out of high school. And I also think it's important that we change some of the kind of cultural semantics around education, making sure folks understand what STEM is, what fields are out there for them, and that, you know, that really starts in our high schools. And with the new high school and beyond planning, how do we encourage students to really look at STEM and STEAM as part of that beyond high school and beyond planning through these? As you were probably aware, we've created, you know, new pathways to graduation, and I think we can utilize some of those new pathways now with STEM as a focus. So I think there's some exciting things that we can continue to kind of tweak. I would agree with the encapsulation that the senator gave about budget. I don't think we're going to make huge leaps in this supplemental cycle in any major changes to budgets, but that doesn't mean we can't continue to tweak and work on some of the policies that we put in place to make sure we're leveraging the very most we can for our kids.
Thank you. This group represents a large number of private and public entities that really have a focus on making sure that we are taking our state into the future. And I'd like to ask you what it is that we can do for you as you approach the legislative session in order to ensure that our state stays on top of things with the STEM initiative.
I would say, I think, first of all, we have appreciated all that you've done in the years past to help educate at least our delegation. We are very fortunate to have an incredible ESD and program here around STEM in the 12th Legislative District, and I know a lot of folks are using that as a model around Washington State, so we can kind of pat ourselves on the back for that, for sure. So that's been really helpful. I think continuing to educate legislators about the importance of STEM education in our schools and how we might better connect career-connected learning and STEM, you know, because those are all sort of the trends that we're seeing in education. We're trying to move kids out of the classroom, my personal opinion, move kids out of the classroom and into more experiential opportunities, whether that's job-based or experiential-based, because that resonates with kids, right? And as we saw in Stehekin, it resonates in a way that's really, really powerful, and they're able to comprehend these complex curriculums in a much more meaningful way because they've touched something, they've experienced something, they've gone out and explored on their own, and they've using deductive reasoning, come to a conclusion that really helps them grasp the concept a lot better than examples on a chalkboard or someone's, I'm dating myself, whiteboard. I know.
Look around the room,
I did
you're
have
in
a
a safe
chalkboard.
crowd.
I did have a chalkboard.
Get a chalkboard in elementary school, maybe.
Maybe. No, my math teacher refused to work on a whiteboard. Always chalk. Anyway, really thinking about how we can connect those areas, and then again, pushing toward mastery-based, competency-based education is really, really important. I think all those things are interrelated. And so how do we work with the legislature? How do we work with all of you to educate one another? Because you all are, the beauty of a group like this is you've got both sides of the coin represented. You've got employers and employees, folks that are looking for both, right? You know what you need, you know what your industries need, and we're trying to figure out how we educate our students in meaningful ways that meet those demands and those needs for the job force of the future. Because in Washington, we are one of the most, I would say we're one of the most innovative states in the country. So how do we stay on that cutting edge and get our kids educated? By the time they're graduating from high school, I mean, they've got to have tools to enter that innovation market. And I think that's where we partner with our ESDs, we partner with our schools, and with all of you to find meaningful solutions.
And I would say, just continued partnerships, as Representative Steele mentioned, and really looking at the STEM education approach from the entire K-20 system. I think a lot of times, we tend to focus on, high school, but it was neat to see the video from Wenatchee Valley College because there's a lot of opportunities, I think, to partner with the community and technical colleges, to continue to partner with the 4 years. I mean, really, I think when we look at education in our state, we're investing billions and billions of dollars through the K-12 system and now with early learning also. But if those young people aren't reaching the attainment, if they're not getting their degrees, either 2 year, and this is something Gene and I have talked a lot about, if they're not actually getting those degrees, and they may be in college, but they got to get those degrees and be ready to enter the workforce. And so I think, and that's what I'm really excited about too with the career connected learning opportunities so that young people can get exposed to more career opportunities and really see how applicable it could be to their education earlier on in the process. I think that's really cool, and that's why I'm excited about a lot of the partnerships locally that we're having. And I also think the STEM community has done a good job of this, but you should continue to be proactive. So, the priorities that you have for next session, or probably in 2021, which is the next big year where we're going to take another big bite at the budget, continue to be proactive and really build upon all the partnership that you have. I think, it's impressive with, just when I've been invited to the Apple STEM Network events just to see the cross section of our community and our region represented. And really, I'm not sure if you all do as awesome of a job and outreach to your community as Dr. Kane does here, but it's really nice to be a part of the opportunities that the Apple STEM Network has to recognize students and be a part of it. And really, to the extent that you all can, try to, like we have here, involve everybody in the community in the process because I think it's a community effort.
Thank you. So we've talked about school, the P20, the P12. Let's talk about the after high school a little bit. What are some areas that you could look at from legislative or from a policy perspective to include our post-secondary into the initiatives at a higher level? They have, degree programs, and we see a lot of attention on K-12, but our colleges and our technical skill centers and our tech centers across the state also need some support. What would you see as some things that you could do from the legislative standpoint to support the STEM initiatives post-high school?
I'll take the first stab at that. I think we need to make sure as a state that we're adequately funding our higher ed system. Because of the 2012 McCleary case and all of that's gone into that and some of the focus on early learning, it's somewhat been to the detriment of our higher ed system. I'm really proud of some of the things that we've been able to do around here for our local community college, but I think if we can continue to either grant-based or make sure that the compensation structure is adequate to recruit and retain the college level instruction that we need, I think that's super important. And just like I said, the recognition of STEM education the whole way through. And I think a diversity of the STEM interest is good. It seems like we've placed a lot of focus on computer science and coding, which I think is helpful, but it goes way beyond that. We need to kind of look at it holistically also.
Anything else?
Well, I certainly concur with the senator that funding is important, that we look at how we fund higher education in Washington State, but also I think we all, as he mentioned, this spectrum of education, helping kids in the K-12 system understand the nexus to their next step through STEM education is really going to be important. So what does that mean? When you're taking this class in the 10th grade, what does that translate into post-secondary education in either a job or into a education path that you need to pick in order to achieve that? So I think the legislature and all of us collectively could do a really good job by helping kids, really have that clearly defined pathway for whatever that post-secondary education looks like, and making sure that they can understand that the STEM curriculum is attached to this job or this opportunity or this, degree.
Great, thank you. So this highly motivated group out here isn't used to sitting all day. They're all doers and shakers. So we're going to be coming to an end here, but I'd like to offer an opportunity for them to pose any questions that they might have for the two of you. Anybody? Yes, Scott.
For the session coming up. Just a couple of pieces I'd like to piggyback on, if possible, with what you mentioned. Both of you are probably somewhat familiar with the learning centers that are a part of our principal association, both CISPAS and at Chelan Peak. And we roughly have about 20,000 20,000 kids, K-12, go through both of those places over a year-long period of time in a variety of different leadership opportunities and other coursework. One of which is actually a STEM outdoor learning center component. And so when you talk about areas or places to embrace, I mean, CISPAS is like its own speaking. And to be outside and to live and to learn and to grow and to have that connection between that, I know they would appreciate any support from your level in relationship to updating the STEM curriculum and some of the opportunities there. And I'm also really excited to hear about the conversation in terms of how to promote the post-secondary success of students going on and how we might be able to reshape and relook that high school experience. One of the items that would be great to take a look at would be the Core 24. Currently, 68% of the schools across our state, from a survey we did 2 years ago, have a 6-period day, which means their schedule is filled up with anything. So when we talk about career-connected opportunities for internship or to take 2 periods where they can go down the road and get involved in something that they might want to be involved in later in life is something that's very difficult to do. So I apologize, it wasn't really any questions. How about what do you plan on doing with those things? But thank you. Anyway, thank you for being here again.
Anybody else have any questions? No.
Questions or feedback from session. That's helpful. It is helpful.
Other questions? Yes, Jeff.
And towards trying to trying to succeed there is to think about the STEM teachers as part of that workforce and to identify that clearly and concisely, that when we're talking about all the variety of people who contribute to this, that in fact it is STEM educators. So that brings me to the notion of our teacher preparation programs in STEM, which are faced with the same challenges that everybody else is doing because they got to talk about a different kind of way of teaching science, a different way with technology, integrating engineering, including computer science, bringing the M of mathematics more intentionally together for the purposes we've been talking about. So I'm wondering about what you think, either this session or moving towards the big session a year from now, might be the appetite of you and your colleagues for a really robust discussion about how to really help our post-secondary institutions meet that challenge in terms of STEM teachers. I will say they are, many of them have an NSF grant now to begin to explore that. I would emphasize explore and build capacity. I think we're a long way from implementation to make it better, but they're headed in that direction. But I don't, this might, now I'm stepping outside the university, I don't want any university folks, I don't think they can get there by themselves. I think a bunch of other people have to get on board and say this is important. And NSF is sort of investing and saying, here's a little bit of money, develop some tools, and guess what, folks, you're kind of on your own after that because they're not in the business of implementation. They're going to leave that to others to do. So I believe we have this exciting opportunity. We heard about it earlier today. Exciting opportunity to actually make Washington State a real leader in trying to prepare teachers to do the kinds of things we would like them to do to get the other outcomes we're talking about. And I'm just wondering, maybe this has not come up at all thus far with you and your colleagues, but I'm wondering whether or not you think that would be something they would want to talk about, because these institutions touch about 90% of the students that we're preparing to be STEM teachers right now.
I think we have to. You know, if we're gonna talk the talk, we have to walk the walk, right? And there's no way in order to move our system forward if we're not effectively giving the tools to our teachers to be better prepared to teach in those arenas. So I say if we, you know, the challenge is always in the legislature. We talk about things that we want to accomplish, but then in a pragmatic way, how do we get there? Logistically, how do we get there? And I think that for most of us, that's still difficult. We don't have the answers. If we did, you know, it would be a much quicker route to implementation. So we have to explore along with the industry and along with that, you know, that area of teacher preparation. We have to explore with you because we want to make sure whatever we're tasking our teachers with, it's going to be reasonable and implementable, and it's going to have the outcomes for the students that we want to see. So anytime you start messing, in my personal opinion, with teacher prep, you've got to really understand the outcomes you're after, and you've got to rely on the folks that are boots on the ground to provide real-time answers, so that we take that feedback in as a legislature, and we take it back out with real effective tools.
So to answer your question too, I think the appetite would be there if that's what the STEM community gets passionately behind. Just when you look around the room here, the diversity of organizations and offices that are represented, yeah, we're a very powerful advocacy group. But what I've seen too often in my 7 or 8 years now in the legislature is sometimes the groups just can't get the organizational skills together to actually develop a cohesive list of clear priorities, and then their advocacy efforts suffer statewide. So, you know, the other thing I've observed too is that sometimes for some of these groups, everything's a priority for them. And if everything's a priority, whether you're, you know, outside the legislature or inside the legislature, then basically nothing's a priority. So as you look ahead towards 2021, which I think the next big push, you know, think about what your 2 or 3 top priorities are, get solidly behind that as a STEM statewide community, and then prepare for how you can advocate for that. Legislators want to help their constituents. That's our job. We want to do what's best for the state, and we should be good listeners. So if you have good ideas for what that is, if it's teacher prep, then we can do that. The other thing I would suggest too is, you know, think about, you know, as you build that coalition of advocacy groups, who are the major 4-year institutions that are most impacted by that? I would presume Central Washington University, Eastern Washington University, maybe not UW, WSU, but maybe them to some degree.
WSU system's part of it.
So WSU, sure,
Western.
for teacher prep. But, you know, no doubt. I mean, UW is an awesome institution, very proud of it, but they do tend to dominate a lot of the advocacy, which is, I guess, to their credit. But just be prepared to make sure that the 4-year universities are also on board with whatever your and that they are prepared to make it one of their top legislative priorities too, because as legislators, we say, hey, we're hearing this from the STEM community about needing this for your teacher prep program. And they're like, well, yes, but we have these other priorities. So then it's like you're not all on the same page, and we kind of cue into that. So just make sure you're all coordinated.
Great, thank you very much. I think it's time for us to head out for some field trips. And so I'd like to thank both of you for being here. I know that you both have a great big heart, not only for kids, but for your communities, and we appreciate your dedication and service. So thank you very much. And thank you.
Thanks for having us.